Jesus' seemingly harsh words of week 6 are indeed qualified by the teaching that immediately follows. Those who are hearing Jesus' woes must not weaponize them, must not try to solve the problem of disparity by dehumanizing the haves or inflicting violence against them. The purpose of this teaching is to push listeners beyond the conventional ethos of, and here I used a couple of anthropological terms that figure in social reading of the Gospels. Balanced reciprocity is a term that anthropologists use for trading things with those who are your social equals. You know, tit for tat. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. And he's trying to shift the consciousness from that to this cosmology of grace, which is based on generalized reciprocity, which is about giving to whoever asks, not waiting to get something back in return, because we know in a generalized reciprocity, sooner or later, the gift keeps coming around. And so it's the practice of mutual aid. Turns out that this was the economic anthropology of traditional village life among poor folk, everybody helping everybody out. Yeah. It still exists in some of our communities today, in some of our neighborhoods today, even in some of our churches today. So it's not a utopia. It's about weaning ourselves off of back scratching and recovering our human capacity to be generous, to be reciprocal. So all throughout this, his language is specifically couched in both economic and moral terms, because you can't pull the two apart. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I was just saying it's a potluck, that reciprocal.
Yeah, it's potluck.
And suddenly we have so much more food than we thought we ever needed.
How did that happen? How did that happen?
Miracle. It's like, yeah, anyway.
I was at our church Thanksgiving potluck last night, and it was like the food was just overflowing, and the vibe was so it just filled my soul. And we all knew that the leftovers were going to the Sunday night supper that fed not the church members, but the 12-step groups that come. Nice. You know, it's just like the vibe that's created around those kinds of community being that way. There's nothing like it. It is, I think, what we're made for, right? Is that what, I mean, we're made for this cosmology of grace.
I think not only are we made for it, I mean, we're made of it. We're wired that way. I mean, what happened in Asheville, happened whenever, devastation roars through, and it clearly is going to be happening more and more often, but that how human beings respond in the aftermath, after the mowing, after the math is the mowing of the grass. So when everything is cut down, we look around and we see who needs what, and we give them what they need. It isn't like, oh, hey, I think I'm going to be heroic today. It's, I woke up and I'm a human being and my neighbors don't have any power. So come on over here and use our power. They don't have any food. They don't have any shelter. We're wired this way. So the cheerleading isn't necessary. We don't need to into heroics. It's our humanity. This is what we are made and designed and built to do. There's nothing unusual at stake here. The only thing unusual is that we just get back in touch with who we are, because we've forgotten that somewhere along the way.
And maybe the role of preachers is reminding.
And to say and to name.
Reminding.
Yeah. And to name over and over and over that scarcity is a lie. And we know it's a lie because every time we get together, we find abundance. It's just right in front of us. And yet there is a lie that we keep being told over and over. And this is something almost demonic, I would say. There's a spiritual side to this where our belief in the lie of scarcity creates so much of the sin that we cope with. It creates so
Mm.
much behaviors that actually create more scarcity out of scarcity. I think
Mm.
scarcity is a self-replicating thing. And the only antidote to it is to say, no, this is a lie. I have this. And like, if there's anything the preacher should be, it should be truthful. And the truth is there's abundance. It's in places where there's poverty, and the only thing we can see is poverty. And it's everywhere. It's in our potlucks. It's in the ways that we worship God. It's in the ways that we respond to hurricanes. And we are often shown how scarcity is a lie, but we still struggle to believe the truth. It's fascinating. And I think the gift of this series can be saying over and over, look at where the abundance is here, because it's not where you think it is. Look at where the abundance is there. It surprised them too. And if anything, perhaps that's one of the most significant roles of the preacher is to hone in on abundance in every single week where these sermons are coming up.
Yeah.
Frankly, y'all just say find abundance every time you preach, because I think that's not a bad ethic to start with.
Well, and to wrap this up, I want to thank you all for this conversation, and especially just I want to thank the spirit of synergy and the Venn diagram that brought Ched's book across my research and led to reconnecting with Ted and Ben for his work. In conclusion, really, I think one of the things that Ched helps us do, and you say this in your book, Ched, and that Bible study can seem like abstract music theory, right? Analyzing old scores from dead musicians with no intention or interest in playing them, you say. Yet a musical score is only truly realized or fulfilled, to use Luke's metaphor, in Acts, through community performance. Similarly, only when we try to embody a scriptural text in our context are we truly interpreting it. And so this idea of abundance embodied, to go back to a phrase that came up at the beginning of our time together, these practices and preachers preaching this renewed and animated sense of these texts and where they can inspire us to a different way of being with each other. Ched, what would you say to us to end?
Well, I think the notion of the Bible being a score that is waiting for a chorus to sing it is a provocative one, and it wants to be sung not in a insular choir loft, but in real life and in social spaces. I think the story of Jesus is of a community choir director who keeps looking for people to help him sing this ancient song. And yet it is a practice, and it does take work, and it can be some heavy lifting, because we've got to learn these ancient tunes, and we've also got to be able to screen out the distractive, predatory music that's constantly playing around us and within us. So we, in our decolonization work, in our cooperative, we talk about 4 steps of a discipleship that tries to sing these scores of God's justice. And the 4 are reschooling, relationship, restorative solidarity, and restitution and repair. And I think they fit very well with the work of Sabbath economics. Reschool, we need to reschool ourselves around economics. We are swallowing, and just as a country swallowed some major fantasies about how economics work in terms of trickle-down theory. We really commend Faith and Money Network based in DC that helps people wean ourselves off the old stories, toxic stories of me first, and figure out how to practice Sabbath economics at the level of our households. We need to really work on relationships, especially with marginalized communities. Ben was talking about that in this conversation, and it's so important. And I highly commend connecting with the Poor People's Campaign throughout this country that has been and will continue to be a key network of connecting people across class and across the landscape for the visions of economic justice. Thirdly, restorative solidarity is figuring out how we stand with rather than stand by. And that's going to be so important in the coming years, not least with immigrants, as Ben has pointed out. United for a Fair Economy is a great advocacy organization based in DC that's really working hard to look at systems and structures of predatory economics and plutocracy. And all of these organizations are named in the book, and I really commend them so that we can sing these songs in actual social space. And finally, those of us who have more, and that's a lot of us in our churches, we need to figure out how we embrace a discipleship of reparation. Luke's entire narrative culminates in the story of Zacchaeus, who, as Ted has talked about, comes down that tree. And even before Jesus opens up, he's like Danny DeVito. I know. So he says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make restitution. And if I have defrauded anyone, and Jesus says, if, he says, I'll restore. He's actually just quoting Torah. These are the law of Moses. When people are robbed, when people are lied to, when people are oppressed, these are ways in which we make repair, we make things whole. And there's so many steps, no step too small and no step too big for us to practice leveling so that we can share in that abundance and everyone can have enough. Our friends at Just Money Advisors in Louisville is a great case in point, helping people who have enough to actually make investments figure out how to see that surplus capital as essentially belonging to those who are poor because they don't have access to capital. And how can we do that through some creative systems and community banking and community investing? So we cannot sing this song without engaging in these kinds of practices. And these practices will strengthen us in singing the ancient song of Jubilee. And I'm just so pleased that this collaborative is going to be helping folk do that in church worship and spilling out of the sanctuary onto the streets.
Yes.
So thanks for your good work, and thanks as always for Ted's genius radiating in so many ways.
Yes.
This has been fun.
Oh, yeah.
It has been fun. Thank you so much to all of you. As I said, I'm going to give Mark Miller the last word. Mark Miller and Lindy Thompson are writing a song, speaking of songs, for this series. And the refrain, I'll just tell you what the refrain is. God's abundance is for all. No one is left outside. Kingdom come, all people one. In trust and love abide. So may it be so. And thank you for all of the work, for all of you. I'm deeply grateful.